But one thing I do want to say is if you have a LOI, you need to know what's in it. And then whenever your lawyer is drafting the contract with it, you don't want to go and start changing all the terms that you initially offered in your LOI. Because even though an LOI is not legally binding, your offer was accepted based on that. And it's your word, it's your reputation. And if you create a contract that is totally different than your LOI, you're not going to make it in this space. So I treat LOIs as if they're contracts, even though they're not, just because I value my reputation and I want people to value it as well. So, welcome to the Ironclad Underwriting Podcast, where precision meets performance in commercial real estate. I'm your host, Jason Williams, and every week we deep dive into the strategies and systems and stories behind rock-solid underwriting. Whether you're a seasoned analyst, an up-and-coming investor, or a commercial real estate professional looking to sharpen your edge, this show is your front row seat to expert insights, emerging trends, and real-world underwriting tactics that stand the test of time and scrutiny. From market assumptions to debt structuring, cap rates to cash flow, we're cutting through the noise and getting to the numbers that matter. So sharpen your pencils and fire up those models. Let's get to work. This is Ironclad Underwriting. Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of the Ironclad Underwriting Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Williams, and I got my co-host, Frank Patalano. How you doing, Frank?
Hello, sir. Another good day of making money.
There you go. Living the dream, right?
I don't know about that, but hoping to get there soon. The ups and downs of real estate, you sell a property, you have cash flush, and then you're trying to buy the next property, and you need to find more money to make it happen.
Yeah, I call that the feast or famine in my household. So
there you go.
Hopefully your feast can cover your famines.
If not, I'm going to be losing some weight.
There you go. True famine.
So what are we talking about today?
So I have a lot of students who, and not just students, but a lot of people who come to me who've never really done too many deals. They sort of know the process. And they heard of this thing called an LOI or a letter of intent, but they don't really know what it is or how it should be laid out. And so let's deep dive into what an LOI is, what it should have in it, and what it means versus how it differs from like a PSA or a contract versus just this LOI. So you ready to begin?
Definitely. This is definitely something you're more of an expert on than I am, by the way. While I'm involved in a lot of deals, I'm usually joining the deal right after the LOI stage or right around the LOI stage. So you've probably done more of these than I have.
Actually, I figured you did more than me, but I don't know. I know we've submitted a few together, so
Yeah.
So what is your take on what an LOI is? And then I'll piggyback off of that.
So I would consider an LOI like almost like a rough draft of a person's sales agreement. We're not paying the money for an attorney to do most of this stuff yet. It's almost like a first pass. It's like, hey, these are some of the basic terms that we want to buy the property, and these are some of the basic terms in order to buy it.
Yeah. So you're exactly right. You're laying out a foundation to the buyer or to the seller as a buyer. Say, hey, I want to buy your property. And here, you'll go into like the specifics. Like, I want to buy the property at this address. That way it's not like a separate property that they're selling. You are talking about a specific property and there's no mixed signals. And then you tell them what you want to pay, what the purchase price will be. And then you tell them you want whatever you want your due diligence period to be. Say, and during an LOI, I always ask for the stars. I say, hey, I want a 90-day due diligence period and 120-day closing and stuff like that. And typically a seller is going to push back and say, no, I'll give you 30 days due diligence and 60-day closing period. My LOIs have evolved over the time. my current LOI versus my first one, I've put in contingencies that I'm wanting. I'm like saying, all right, hey, I'm going to buy this so long as I get financing at a reasonable rate. And I'll put what the reasonable rate would be. I'll say I need 70% LTV at, and then I'll put whatever the going interest rate is. I'm not going to ask for like a 3% interest rate when interest rates are 7, but I will say I want it at a 7 when interest rates are sitting at 7. That way, if all I'm getting are quotes for loans for 8.5 or 9, it's like, look, I'm not getting the financing that I said I needed to make it work, so I can't buy this property.
I mean, you basically just improved your original draft based on experience you've had.
Yep.
Nice.
My first one, we actually put money hard day one, and I actually put that into the LOI saying, hey, we'll be putting money hard day one. And so, I mean, when you do that, you need to be explicit in it, and you need to make sure that the seller or the seller knows, because if you don't want it hard day one and they think it should be day one, and it's somehow written into the contract that it's day one, then you're liable. So you need to make sure that you explicitly tell them everything that you need. So, um, let's see. Like I talked about,
How legally binding do you consider an LOI?
LOI is not legally binding at all. This is, like I said, just laying the foundation. And once, and these are like your term that you're going to buy it at. It's like, I'm going to buy it so long as you follow these terms. And then there's going to be some pushback, and then you come to an agreement between the terms. And then the terms that you come to agreement on are going to be written up into your PSA, your purchase sales agreement, which is also called the contract. Whenever you're under contract, that's what that means.
With based on what you're saying, I'm thinking about the concept of communication and like someone that's saying yes. So it's like if you agreed here as we move down the pipe, obviously we're not going back on stuff. We continue to agree as we're getting closer and closer to a full agreement for that contract.
Yeah. Um, and you're gonna have like a due diligence period in there. And one thing that was like taboo 5 years ago was, hey, I'm gonna pay you 10 million for this property and your LOI. And then that gets under contract for 10 million, and you do your due diligence and you're like, all right, we need to buy it at 8.5 because of all of these deferred maintenance items and stuff like that. That was taboo to do that 5 years ago, 6 years ago. Now it's a little bit more acceptable, but it's still, people don't like retrading too much.
I would say it's market specific in some ways. In the hottest markets, it's always a good idea to go in with your firmest offer. And you're right, I agree. When the market was hot, the concept of retrading, which is what some people call this, was almost non-existent because there was other buyers waiting in the wings to pick up this property. And especially when the market was going up every few months, if they waited long enough, they could have found someone with a higher offer after that. But as the market has definitely slowed in many parts of the country, uh, and especially with lending standards and everything else, especially when you've walked the units and say, "Whoa, this needs a lot more work than we expected," the concept of retrading has become not acceptable, but it's not as rare as it once was.
Yeah.
Just like the concept of putting money hard, like you were saying. Uh, in the hottest markets, the best product at the best times. Yeah, you were putting money down hard in order to be able to get a deal. Now, I know a lot of deals that we have under contract. There's no money hard.
Yeah. I typically don't put money hard, and I mean, it depends on the market. It depends on like the status of the market. If it's like a seller's market, then you kind of have to sometimes, and I will weigh that. But personally, I would rather not do it. But I'm not against it. I've already done it once, and so I understand the consequences if I don't. Um, but one thing I do want to say is, if you have an LOI, you need to know what's in it, and then whenever your lawyer is drafting the contract with it, you don't want to go and start changing all the terms that you initially offered in your LOI. Because even though an LOI is not legally binding, your offer was accepted based on that. And it's your word, it's your reputation. And if you create a contract that is totally different than your LOI, you're not going to make it in this space. So I treat LOIs as if they're contracts, even though they're not, just because I value my reputation and I want people to value it as well. So, um,
Jason,
let's
since
see.
I'm your partner, I value your reputation as well.
Thanks, Frank. I value your reputation. um, so like I would have the provisions. I would have like due diligence. So you always want to due diligence time. And if you don't have money hard, you want to be able to say, hey, you want to be able to get out at a certain time. And so you want to be able to make sure you can go through all your due diligence items you need to in a timely manner. And you would explicitly say, I want 30 days for due diligence or 45 days or however many days. Um, and
And when
then
we say due diligence here, we're not just talking about visiting the property. Maybe you need to go a little deeper on what due diligence is about.
So on my sample LOI I have in my vaults on my ironcladunderwriting.com website, which is a free resource for anyone who wants to go and download it, I have due diligence items as Exhibit A that's attached to the LOI. So whenever, if you use my LOI, you would get all these items that I use. And it's stuff like just, I want to know what the title looks like. I want to know built plans, um, operating licenses and permits, insurance policies. I want to be able to do a lease audit on all the residents. I want to be able to go in and look at all the units, inspect all the units. I want the most current rent roll and financial statements. I want copies of all the service agreements, contracts, laundry, stuff like that. Warranties, if there are any warranties for like roof repair or something like that. I want to know all the stuff that still would pertain to like a new buyer. Actually, on a property we were looking at the warranties on the roof, and the roof that we were looking at was actually incomplete. So, and I think we've talked about this before. So I was able to get the seller to get the roof repaired under his warranty because the warranty would have expired once the ownership
Nice.
changed. And so with that, it was no money out of the seller's pocket. It was no money out of my pocket to get the roof repaired, because what happened is it looked like the roofing company just ran out of materials and then just called it a day and shut up shop and went home. And so there's like literally probably about a 10-20 foot section on top of one of the roofs just was just totally bare of shingles.
I'm just thinking with the due diligence checklist. One of the things I'm thinking about is like the loss runs and the insurance. I mean, we looked at a property near the other one that we have where there was a fire, a quad got torn down, and nobody thought to say, "Oh, the insurance is going to be what was the price? Triple the price?"
Yeah, it was end up going to be between double and triple the price.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, when your insurance triples, and think about it, insurance is one of the most expensive parts of your expenses. When your insurance triples, that's pretty powerful, especially to your NOI and to your purchase price.
But the thing with that is the owners never put it on their insurance yet. So there wasn't any declared losses or anything for that. It's just that if I had an insurance inspector walk the property, he
Yeah,
would
they're
have
not
seen
stupid.
the burnt unit and then say, hey, wait a minute, what's going on with this? And why hasn't there been a claim? And so that's so, but yeah, you do want all your insurance losses and everything. So
Yeah,
within
yeah.
like the last 2-3 years or so, even if they're not if they're not the sellers, you want to see what they were within like the last certain time frame.
Another big one for me is lease audits, especially when you're walking units, especially if you can do lease audits before you walk the units, which is even nicer because the number of pets is usually off somehow.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing that I always like to see is the lease audits that show how many pets are recorded versus how many units have pet bowls and crates and stuff like that who aren't paying the pet rents and stuff like that.
Yep.
So, of course, then they
Service
call them
agreements.
emotional support animals and stuff like that. But then they have other guidelines they have to
Yeah,
follow.
still
And
different rules for that. Service agreements. Oof, we've been hammered before if you miss a service agreement. Some of these like laundry ones that have an automatic 6-year extension. If you don't cancel between 120 days and 91 days from the end of the contract and stuff like that, those can be painful.
Yeah. Um, you know, contracts with utility bills. You want to see what the utility bills have been like. Certificate of occupancy. Um, yeah, the insurance loss runs, copies of real estate and personal property. You want to know going in what is going to be coming with that property. It's like, is there a vehicle out there that's part of the property that has the property's name on it, but it's actually the owner's personal truck? You're not going to be getting that truck, and so you need to know what's personal and what's the real estate property that you're going to be buying. So,
especially if you think you're getting that truck.
yeah, a lot of times you might think, hey, I'm going to be getting the truck, and then I can do stuff between different properties and stuff like that, and then that truck never happens. So,
We have a property that we're buying right now, and we caught the employees um, picking up a lot of the bigger equipment and it magically leaving or disappearing from the property. And my partner called up and made sure that they were aware that this was all listed as personal property on the agreement. So you guys need to put that back.
was it listed as personal property or the property's property?
It was, when I say personal property, I mean personal to the business.
Oh, okay. Um,
Just because you're paying taxes on it too, don't forget. It's
yeah.
different states and counties.
See, I have year to date and prior to full years of monthly operating statements and income records. Seller's environmental reposts if available. List of all capital improvements that have been made on the property in the last 2 years. Copies of all resident ledgers at closing. So if someone's behind by however much rent, then so on a seller, and this could be written into the contract. The seller
know where you're going with this. Go ahead. I can't wait.
due the rent for whatever month, and it's going to be prorated. So if you close in the middle of the month, the seller is due half a month of rent for each resident. So if a resident is behind by 2 months, the sellers still do that if they ever catch up. And so you have to be able to, unless they write it off as like bad debt or something. So what are you thinking?
I was just thinking the opposite of that. If the tenant hasn't paid the seller, depending on how you write it in the contract, the seller loses that money and usually it doesn't get cleaned up afterwards anyway. You might offer,
so
as a
if they
buyer, you
get,
might offer to negotiate the deal to bring the tenant back on track.
yeah. Um, it all depends, I think, on how it's recorded in the profit and loss.
That's true too.
Because
Yeah.
if they've already declared it a loss, then no, they don't get to take it. But if they haven't declared it a loss yet, then I think they can. But again, it's all how your contract is written. Normal disclaimer: Frank and I are not lawyers, nor are we accountants or financial advisors or anything other than podcasters at this time. So take what you hear from us with a grain of salt, but at least it gives you some ammo to go and talk to a lawyer about. So
I love you saying that disclaimer because I have literally been partners with attorneys who have screwed up, and it's crazy.
I would typically, if I had a partner who was an attorney, I would probably still want like another attorney doing everything.
The answer to
But
that
that's
is
just me.
absolutely.
That is even if that other lawyer screws up that you pay, at least you can walk away from that. Versus your partner, which you're kind of married to until whenever the project term ends. So
Yes, I have a lot of sister wives since you brought that up, including you, Jason.
yeah. So going back to my due diligence, I want all the surveys, and ideally you want a survey. You don't want to have to pay for a survey. Sometimes you will. It depends on what the title company says. So that's why you want the survey, and then you can hand it over to title and then say, hey, does this survey work or do we need to get a new one? So
Not only what the title company says, what the lender says too.
yeah. And then there's any and all notices, violations, or correspondence with any of the governments, municipal, county, state, or federal, or whatever. Just are you getting hammered every month because you're not mowing your yard in the alley or whatever, mowing the grass in the alley, and you're going to be charged $450 to for the city to mow that alley right after closing. So that's just some of the things for due diligence I have in my LOI. Um, I generally put too much stuff. A lot of times, the seller will initial or say we can't get or whatever, and if they can't get it, that's fine. If they can, that's good. But that's how I send out all my LOIs, and I don't think I've had a seller be able to give me everything that I've asked for. I'd rather ask for too much and not get everything than not ask for anything and definitely get nothing. So
Definitely. So, I mean, obviously the due diligence checklist itself is super important to an LOI. I was thinking some of the more basic stuff. I mean, when you make an offer in a standard market, what are you usually offering for a deposit?
typically what I do is for earnest money, I'll put 1%. And I will say 1%, unless I have to change my offer and make it like 2% or whatever. But I generally start off with 1%, and then I have it not go hard until after due diligence or whatever the other contingencies are. So for like a $10 million property, I'll put up, was it 100K or whatever?
Yep. Yep.
For, um, let's see what else. Also, for the letter of intent, I also have an expiration date on it. If you don't have an expiration date, you and I both seen where brokers have come to us 6 months, 12 months later, saying asking if our offer is still available.
I mean, I can see them asking anyway, whether there's an expiration date or not. But yeah, that was a great story that we survived when interest rates went up, what, 7 times in a row, and they
Mm-hmm.
came back and they're like, oh, well, we originally denied you this offer, but uh, are you still interested in that price? I said, no, we're like $2 million less, stuff like that.
So, and for an expiration date, I typically put 2 weeks, and I put like a actual time. I have, if you look at my LOI that's on my website, you can see Tuesday, expiration date Tuesday, July 1st, 2022 at 12 p.m. Central Time. So at 12:01, it may or may not still be a good offer. That's you have to reach out, but as of right now, it's not a good offer. Um, also have it in that if we are negotiating the LOI or negotiating a PSA, I have it that they won't be negotiating with somebody else at the same time.
Yes,
If they
definitely.
if they accept my offer, then we're both going in with good faith that offer is accepted. You don't want to say offer 10 million and go into agreement, pay lawyer fees to get a PSA going for 10 million, and then they turn around and say, "Oh, by the way, we accepted this offer for 10.5 in
Yep.
that
Good
same
luck.
time
You still owe
period."
your attorney 20 grand.
Yep. So, and like I said, it's non-binding, but I mean, it still shows good faith on your part and the seller's part to carry it out as if it was. Um, but also, so I also have it so that the seller signs it and I sign it. So I wonder if that like standstill part where they can't negotiate is binding or not since it's signed. I don't know. That's a good question.
Sounds like you need to have
Um,
an expert in the room to ask, like an attorney.
yeah. And you mentioned you would do this before you engage an attorney, but every attorney that I've talked to asked if they were going to be sending out the LOI. And so it sounds to me like they will do the LOIs for you if you haven't already. So,
Oh, they definitely want to make money.
yeah. But, but you do want to send the copy of the LOI or the accepted LOI
Yes,
to
absolutely.
your lawyer so that the lawyer knows what they're getting into and how to
I would
draft the
say
documents properly.
I would say if you're just starting out, you might have the attorney draft the LOI, but over time, you might be drafting LOIs because it's going to be save you money, especially if you're making a lot of offers.
Yeah. And you and I both sent out LOIs that have been rejected numerous times.
Absolutely.
We put out our best offer, and it's like, we're going in. We want to buy this property, but the best we can do is this, or
You might put in
maybe
your best offer. I usually just put in an offer that works
it,
with room
it,
to negotiate.
well, I always put in room to negotiate,
Oh,
but
there you go. There you go.
but you want to get at least close, because if they're getting like 50 LOIs and they're all right around the
Yeah,
same
that's true. That's
amount,
true.
they're not going to want to have to go back and negotiate all of them.
Yeah,
And
and sometimes they'll do rounds like, "Hey, listen, we're gonna take the top three and go to highest and best," stuff like that.
yeah, best and final.
Best and
Um,
final.
so yeah, that there's like a whole bidding process. It's almost like an auction, silent auction, where you write down what you want to buy it at, and then they go and they divvy it up and say, all right, these are the three going to best and final. And so when it goes to best and final, you want to tweak it to a little bit better so that there's more incentive for them to sell it to you versus one of the other people. So um I think it's more just a game that brokers play than anything. Just try to squeeze a little bit more out of the turnip or whatever. So
You mean like the fact that they have two other people looking at it at the same time you do, even though the property's been for sale for 4 months?
yeah, so that's another thing is whenever you submit an LOI, there's always going to be three other offers, or you're the third offer. It doesn't matter how many offers are actually been submitted. The brokers will say there's always other offers. So again, another game that they play. Um, Anything else on LOIs? I think that's pretty much it.
That's it.
Like I said, I have a sample LOI. Feel free to use it. I've pieced mine together from many different LOIs, and this is the version that I use now whenever I do it. And it's a free resource. Again, it's ironcladunderwriting.com. And yeah, we'll catch you next time. Bye.
Thanks.
And that's a wrap for this episode of the Ironclad Underwriting Podcast. If you got value from today's conversation, make sure to subscribe, rate, and share the show. And don't forget to connect with us on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, or check us out at our website at ironcladunderwriting.com for more insights and updates. If you have a question, a deal you're analyzing, or a topic you want us to tackle, shoot us a message. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep your assumptions grounded, your models sharp, and your underwriting ironclad.